the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Yaron Brook Show. I am now back in the country for a little while. Friday, I fly to Mexico for 5 talks, I think, and then Guatemala 1 talk. So I'll be gone for another week. Hopefully, we'll see. I'll try to do some shows from Mexico. That'll be interesting to actually broadcast from my hotel in Mexico City and let you know the state of objectivism, the state of our ideas in far off Mexico. Not so far off, close by, relative to Europe and everywhere else I've been. It's close by. I don't know. All right, today I wanna catch up on the news. We talked the day before yesterday a little bit. I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to talk about we didn't get to. Of course, SuperChat is available, is open, so I will be taking SuperChat questions whenever on anything you want to ask about, anything you want to chat about. So use the SuperChat feature for that. We've got open SuperChat today. And I want to remind you, of course, to support the show and to use my website for subscribing to the show. I know a lot of you, I've seen a lot of you already do that. Thank you. Website, yaronbrookshow.com/support. yaronbrookshow.com/support is the best way now to support the show. Subscribestar.com/yaronbrookshow is the other way to support the show. I am going to phase out Patreon. Hopefully, many of you are moving away from Patreon to one of those 2 services. Whatever's most convenient for you is fine with me, but I would like to be out of Patreon by the end of March at the latest. All right, reminder, you can ask any questions that you want on Patreon, on SuperChat on YouTube. All right, it's late over here. There will be a show tomorrow. We'll be doing our monthly hangout with Patreon supporters. We'll be taking questions from them. We'll be taking questions from SuperChat. So tomorrow is an open Q&A. Get your SuperChat questions ready. We will be also taking questions answering the questions from the Patreon voting that happened. And we're gonna move the Patreon voting we're gonna try to figure out how to get you all voting on my website and on my and on Subscribestar, combine the voting and then answer the questions that get the highest rating based on some combination of all of that. But in the meantime, Patreon is what we'll do. That's where still a vast majority of you are still on Patreon, so we will use that. All right, I'll get to your question, Taylor, in a few minutes. So Taylor's started us off with a super chat. Angela reminds me that we're actually using a Survey Monkey survey for it so that we can use it on any platform. It's not platform specific. And so we'll take questions on all 3 platforms, load them up onto the Survey Monkey, and get your responses there. Somebody's asking if I'm recovering from my cold. It's taking a little while. It goes to my chest and it's a cough and it takes a little while. But it never got into it being a really bad cold. I stuffed myself with vitamins. I don't know if that works. The number one thing that works for colds is sleep. So I tried to get cram as much sleep as I could. I tried to take some naps while I was traveling. And I think sleep is what prevents the cold from getting to be significant. I find that when I get really nasty colds and worse, it's when I don't sleep enough. And that seems to be the biggest issue. All right, I want to start off with this story because I think it's got so many dimensions to it. It's kind of cool. So there's a group out there called Patriotic Millionaires. Patriotic Millionaires, as compared to all those other, I guess, non-patriotic millionaires. Anyway, what makes Patriotic Millionaires patriotic in their mind is the fact that this is a group of millionaires who think that they pay too few taxes and think that the tax cuts that Donald Trump initiated or the Republicans passed last year were unfair because they, reduced their own taxes by too much, and that they should pay a fairer share, and they should pay. They feel like they pay less. Like Warren Buffett, who feels like he pays less than employees, and so on. And many of them have already made a lot of money and are now retired, and they just want to pay more money. And I guess that is a very patriotic attitude, according to these people, because they believe that our government needs our money, and the government should, as their duty, take it from them, from millionaires. Now, this is, messed up on a number of different levels. I mean, one of the interesting things at the very end of this article was the idea that I guess they were asked, well, why don't you just write a check to the government? Why don't you can pay more taxes if you want, right? There's no limit on that. And the guy says, I don't want to just give my money to the government. I want them, he doesn't say this, I'm adding this, I want them to forcibly take it from me. And I want to be treated equally with all my other millionaire brethren and to be taxed equally. I don't want to have to pay extra. I mean, if they were really, I guess, patriotic based on their understanding of patriotism, that is big government and the government should get a lot of our money and should get a lot of their money, they would just write a check to the government. But they're not, right? They don't. I love the tone of this. I don't want to just give away my money to the government. That's right. That's why you should be advocating for lower taxes, much lower taxes. You should be giving a lot less of your money to the government. Now, part of the issue here is, I think there are a number of issues, and there's a number of paths we can take with this and get directions we can take with this. One is, it's sad that these people feel so guilty about not paying taxes, feel so guilty about making money and being successful, that they really want the government to take it away from them. I think they feel like they're not doing their fair share because they got so much, right? It's this Obama idea of you didn't build that. You remember that famous speech that Obama gave, you didn't build that. And these millionaires are taking that seriously. Yeah, we didn't build that. The government had a lot to do with it. All the infrastructure was built, and we benefited enormously, and we have to give back. And the giving back, charity is too self-interested for them. It's too narrow for them. And I think it's tempting not to give to charity. And that's what bothers them. The people who talked about giving to charity here, it was interesting. The people in this group who talked about giving to charity, they're giving to progressive political causes that are then lobby the government to raise taxes on them. Well, why don't you just start a charity that helps the poor if you feel like the poor are being hurt by not enough government programs and not enough of your money being stolen from you and given to them? Why don't you start a charity that helps whatever group you think is being screwed? Why don't you get all your millionaire friends together and start that charity? No. They would really, psychologically, they have to do is have the government take it from them and the government decide how it's going to be used. Because to them, it would be too selfish. It would be too self-interested. It would be too much using their own minds and using their own value system to determine where the money to go to just give it to charity. They want to be coerced, and then they want somebody else to make the decision of how the money is going to be spent. And of course, they also want all millionaires to be taxed so that there's a much bigger pool in the hands of government so that government can do bigger things. So here's a group of people who doesn't appreciate what they've done, who doesn't appreciate how much they've changed the world, who doesn't appreciate how much they've contributed to the lives of American citizens in the country already, and are therefore demanding that their taxes be raised so they can finally contribute to their fellow man. So a sense of guilt because, they didn't build it. A sense of guilt because altruism demands a sacrifice. And who was it who termed it? I think Bush always talked about shared sacrifice. Shared sacrifice. So it demands shared sacrifice. Altruism demands that sacrifice. And they feel guilty because they're not going to do it themselves. They want to be forced into the shared sacrifice. And this is the sneaky way, here's this guy, the one guy they're interviewing here is on a trip around the world, on a yacht, on this big cruise ship. He's in the South Pacific right now, and they're interviewing him, I guess, by FaceTime. And he's having a blast, seeing the sunset, enjoying all his money, and complaining bitterly about how he's not paying enough taxes. And how guilty he feels for not paying enough taxes. In so many ways, that is tragic and sad and horrific. Partially because the higher taxes are going to prevent the next guy from getting to where he is. Like AOC 70% marginal income tax rate is not going to affect him so much because he's living on retirement income. He's not making that much money anymore. He's already made it all. But it'll prevent the next guy, the next poor guy who raises himself by his bootstraps and succeeds and becomes a multimillionaire. That tax is going to hurt him. And it's tragic because he can't really enjoy that cruise because he didn't do enough of his sacrificing. He didn't do enough of his giving. He didn't do enough, so-called, for society to be worthy of enjoying it. He says, we have to show that we have some concern for the country and that we are willing to pay some taxes. Now, notice too, and I want to notice too, that there's no discussion here about the role of government. There's no discussion here about what the country is, who the country is. There's no discussion here about what it means to be patriotic. In the whole article, there's none of that is discussed. And these people don't really think in those terms. Because what is the role of government? It's to take care of people. It's to fulfill your altruistic needs by forcing you to contribute by taxing you. It's to take care of everybody and therefore it needs a massive pool of money in order to do that. What does it mean? What does it mean to talk about a concern for the country? What country? Who is he concerned with exactly? The country's doing pretty good. I'm doing fine. I'm part of the country. You're doing fine. You're part of the country. So which part of the country is not doing okay that he needs to be taxed in order to support? And will raising his taxes actually help anyone? Right? Not only is that economically a fallacy, but morally is redistributing his wealth to other people actually help those other people? No thought about that. Right? And then one of them says, we're very concerned about that huge inequality thing. Right? He doesn't even know what he's talking about. What inequality thing and why do you care? Why does it make a difference? What are you worried about? How does it affect your life? Why does it affect your life? One of the others once says, it's a pretty good deal for us, but it's not good for the country. What does that mean? What is the country? Who is the country? Where is the country? This is what it means to think tribal, to think in a tribal manner. Yeah, we're good. I'm good. I'm good. But the country, where's the country? Who is this? Who's suffering? How do I? Right. So it is such a perversion and it's such a awful perspective. And, you know, a lot of them say, look, a tax system is a monstrosity. And I agree. The tax system is a monstrosity. It's a monstrosity because it taxes the rich so much. It's a monstrosity because it has all these loopholes and all these deductions and all these exclusions. And it's a monstrosity because some people pay and some people don't. And there's no logic to any of it other than the government trying to manipulate our behavior and trying to do stuff that's good for the country. It's a monstrosity because it's tribal and collectivistic. If it was an individualistic tax system, even though the only really individualistic tax system is a zero tax system, it would at least be flat and tax everybody the same. And in terms of a percentage, even, dollar-wise it's not, tax everybody the same percentage-wise and not try to manipulate people into particular types of behavior, into, saving or not saving, giving to charity or not giving to charity, buying a home or renting, or the million other things that it incentivizes people to do on a personal income tax basis or on a federal income tax basis. Move to Puerto Rico or not move to Puerto Rico. All right, so patriotic millionaires. Wow. Talk about guilt and collectivism, tribalism. All right, we got a bunch of super chat questions, so let's start going through those. If I work for a technology company that helps government violate people's rights, is it moral for me to work for them? I mean, I think it is, because partially it's impossible to avoid such companies. In a sense, every company in technology is going to sell products to the government. The government can buy those products, and those products are going to be used in one way or another to violate rights. Now, if your company specializes in work for the government and specializes in products that help the government in particular violate rights, I would look for a different job. And the nice thing about technology is that there are alternatives, right? There's a lot of competition. Your labor's worth a lot, and you can look for another job. So I think it's the type of situation. Are you supplying the NSA with a particular mechanism by which to violate the rights of American citizens? Are you providing supercomputers to the government to track what we do, how we do it, when we do it, and to follow us in every aspect? Are you providing the Chinese government with facial recognition software so that they can create social scores? I would get out of those businesses. But are you working at Google, Facebook, whatever, which interact with the government in some way? Are you building computers and the government buys computers? It really depends on to what extent and specifically how your technology is being used by the government. And it's a hard one because, again, it's impossible in the kind of mixed economy that we have to separate ourselves from the government. Do you think Hillsdale College is a good school despite the conservative Christian message? I think it's a very mixed school. You get some good foundations on American politics, American history, but they've definitely tilted with a very conservative Christian perspective. So economics is good. They've got a lot of good economics teachers, at least they've had. I haven't looked at who's there today, but they've had a lot of Austrian professors, a lot of Austrian economists who are good. So you get a strong, basic Austrian economics degree there. I worry about the politics and kind of the other fields because of the history. Although Buden Folsom's there, and he's probably the best historian of business of the 19th century and early 20th century that you have. So just to study with him would be a lot of fun and incredibly valuable. So I think it really is a mixed bag. And if you go there, you have to be prepared and you have to mentally adjust, just like you would in a leftist-leaning school, for when what I'm getting is biased. They probably overemphasize the Christianity of the founders and the role Christianity had in the founding of America and its success. They probably overestimate the role of certain traditions or certain institutions in terms of the history of the United States. So, but I know people who teach there who are also very good on some really interesting stuff. All right, this is good. Kevin asks a topic I wanted to talk about, so this is perfect. Is the UK correct to revoke citizenship of ISIS brides wanting to return? I think there's only two options that any European country, in America, has in terms of ISIS brides, ISIS fighters who want to return. And the two options are, one, revoke their citizenship. They have basically committed treason against the UK. They have fought against an enemy with an enemy of the United Kingdom, an enemy of Western civilization, an enemy of the United States, an enemy of France, an enemy of Germany, an enemy, an organization that's committed horrific terrorist attacks in London, in Paris, in Germany. And therefore, revoking the citizenship is, I think, the best, nicest thing that can be done. I think the children, the children of the ISIS, they should have their citizenship revoked. The wives should have their citizenship revoked. And then, the only alternative to that is to bring them back to England and to try them for treason. And I think the penalty for treason should be life in prison or hanging or the death sentence. And I'd say for the fighters in ISIS who are returning by the hundreds to Europe, and it's unbelievable to me, they're returning to Europe and nothing is done. They're being tracked. They're being monitored. No, they should be rounded up, tried for treason, and put in jail for the rest of their lives. I mean, these people actively engaged in an organization that committed terrorist attacks against the countries that now they're returning to become normal, peaceful citizens in. I mean, how nuts, insane is that? It is completely crazy. So, treason, right, is what they should be tried for. So the brides, the children should just have their citizenship revoked. And the fighters should be brought and prosecuted. And the harshest penalties possible, including the death penalty, should be considered for them. I mean, they killed people. They fought in a war. I guess you could call it, but they're not even prisoners of war. This is not a war engaged by some government that is now surrendered and there's some negotiated peace. No, this is an ongoing war. This is a perpetual war. This is a war instigated by Islamists, a war that ISIS is just one party of, a war that is going to continue. And to have all these fighters who are now trained and now experienced wandering around the streets of Europe and being monitored. How long are they going to be monitored? For the next 20, 30 years? How do you know if they're not, spreading the ideology and training new people and training new recruits or planning the next attack? When are you going to catch them? How intense is the monitoring? Can you monitor all of them? No, they should, again, round it up and tried for treason. It is truly unbelievable that this is not happening. It's truly unbelievable that anybody would speak in favor of these monsters, of these people who adopted this, who volunteered to go and become terrorists. Terrorists against the country in which many of them were born, terrorists against the country that they emigrated to, but terrorists against the country that now they want to return to. So here's another question. So I wanted to say that about ISIS fighters and the ISIS brides, and the same with America. There's some American brides as well that want to come home. No, they revoke their citizenship. They can stay in the desert in Syria, and if they come home, they should be tried for treason. And certainly the fighters, anybody who used a gun at ISIS's behest, should be tried for treason. Avid Film Buff asks, has AOI ever considered doing a course on the works of Victor Hugo or romantic literature in general? I mean, we would if we had an expert in that, and we have in the past. So if you go to the Ayn Rand e-store, you can find lectures and courses by Shoshana Milgram or by Andrew Bernstein, I think, on exactly these topics, on Victor Hugo and romantic literature. I think those are the incredibly valuable topics, and we have had courses. I think as more of the content from the bookstore is put up on line on YouTube, you will discover more of it. But you can go now, what is it, 99 cents to download a lecture, or $1.99? You can get access to all of that amazing stuff. Andrew Bernstein and Shoshana Milgram have done courses or lectures on Victor Hugo and romantic literature. But yes, I think in our future is more of that. Jason asks, is the mixed economy more stable than Ayn Rand thought, or is the free element of the mixture just growing faster than they can kill us? I don't know if it's more stable than what she thought, because it's hard to tell how stable she thought it was. That is, I think Ayn Rand understood, and you see it in Atlas Shrugged, she understood that the mixed economy survives as long as the Dagnys and the Reardons continue working. And this is why the urgency that John Galt has to convince Dagny, to convince Reardon, to convince every one of those industrialists to go on strike, because as long as they're not going on strike, the mixed economy continues. And I think she understood that. And I think that's what you're seeing. That is, it's not that the free element of the mixture is growing faster. It's the free element of the mixture is unbelievably powerful. It's hard to underestimate how powerful it is. I mean, think about the little freedom that they have in China and how much prosperity, how much wealth, how much economic growth in a much more socialist, in a sense of government intervention in the economy like China is. Or look at Scandinavia, look at Europe. But the entrepreneurs, the builders, the creators, the makers, the innovators, the thinkers, every one of them is so powerful that they can overcome massive amounts of regulations and controls and taxes. Again, think about Dagny. Think about how Dagny overcomes every barrier thrown at her. And she keeps going, and she keeps building, and she keeps creating economic growth, so-called GDP. Right? And now think about an economy where you've got lots of Dagnys, which you do today. Silicon Valley is all Dagnys. But you've got more than that. You've got small business owners. You've got technology companies all over the country. You've got entrepreneurs inventing new stuff. It's not just the technology. And then you've got the leverage technology gives you in terms of productivity gains. So the application of technology into plastics, into grocery shopping, look at what Amazon is doing, into every other field that exists out there, and the economic growth that expands. So in an ever-growing, even though the sector that regulates and controls seems to be ever-growing, the leverage and the increased productivity generated by the Dagnys and the Reardons is so powerful. They are such massive atlases. This is why I get so angry at things like, what was it earlier? Patriotic millionaires who want to pay more taxes. I mean, they are the people dragging this economy forward in spite of government. They are the people providing jobs in spite of government. They're the people creating economic growth in spite of government. And it's that genius, that productive genius, that energy, that hard work, that production that drives us forward in spite of the bad part of the mixture that tries to hold it all back and continuously holds it back. Now, the other thing that happens is what you tend to get in a mixed economy is periods in which the mixture shifts. That is, periods in which the role of government shifts, at least in terms of specific areas. So, for example, you get a Thatcher-Reagan period in the United States and UK, where, at least in the US, regulations shrunk dramatically. And I've always said regulations is probably the thing that hampers the atlases, hampers the productive geniuses the most. So you get a little bit more freedom, and then Clinton doesn't really increase regulation. It's only Bush that increases regulations, and then Obama. Now you got Trump decreasing regulations a little bit again. And you get another spurt of energy and economic growth and productivity and innovation. and then that'll be reduced with the next president. And so it goes up and down, the mixture, but generally the mixture is moving to the left. And you can see the rhetoric among our politicians is more and more and more and more to the left. Republicans have shifted to the left, and Democrats have shifted radically to the left. So the leftist agenda, the anti-business, the anti-markets agenda keeps moving leftwards. Greater intervention in the economy, but you get these moments, periods, a few years in which there's a little bit of loosening up, and that creates massive energy. And it is still true that you know, areas like Silicon Valley are less regulated than much of the rest of the economy, and that's where you get most of the productive genius and most of the increased productivity and most of the creation of new products that generate the kind of economic growth that we get. All right, I think that answered that question. But, you know, don't assume that Ayn Rand just thought it was falling off a cliff, because I think she was it's not clear what she thought in terms of timing. And that's all about timing. I think the process takes a long time. I think the Enlightenment is a force in our culture that takes a long time to eviscerate. Freedom is a force in our culture that takes a long time to eviscerate. And the atlases are a force in our culture. The great productive businessmen are a force in our culture that it takes a long time to completely demoralize and destroy. But that's what they're trying to do, left and right. Okay, Michael asks, is the massive rise in homelessness across the United States due to us becoming more socialist? Are leftists trying to get people used to seeing poverty around them to eventually bring us all there? So yes, I think there's no question that the rise in homelessness is a consequence of a rise in government intervention. I wouldn't call it socialism, but a rise in government intervention in the economy, which creates, I think, ultimately the homelessness problem. But it's, you know, first of all, I don't know. I haven't seen the statistics. I'm curious whether the homelessness problem is really increasing, whether it's become much bigger than it used to be. I remember in San Francisco, it's always been a problem. I remember in the 90s, it was horrible to walk around San Francisco in the amount of homeless people there. And I think in many cities, it's always been the case. Indeed, what I think is happening is the more cities become leftist, the more homeless people there are in the streets of those particular cities. And I don't know if that's just moving people around or if it's on a national scale, they're more homeless than they were before. I don't know the answer to that. That would be, I'd have to look it up and check the statistics on it. If you know, Michael, then I'd be curious. I don't think the leftists are trying to get people used to seeing poverty around them. I don't think that they think in that way. Look, leftists don't think that they're going to make people poor. It's not like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thinks that she's going to make everybody poor. I mean, and Karl Marx didn't think he was going to make everybody poor. He actually thought he was going to make people richer than under capitalism. And I think AOC doesn't think she's going to make everybody poor. I think she thinks, she deludes herself, she evades to think that she's going to make everybody middle class. And I think that's what Paul Krugman and Stiglitz and all these leftists think. They don't think in terms of, I want to turn America into Venezuela, although that is the consequence of ultimately their actions, and that is the logical consequence. They don't think that. If they thought that, it would be too horrific for them to contemplate. That you can't hold that evil in your mind. I'm going to destroy America and make it into Venezuela. They can't hold that in their mind. They can't. And when they say Venezuela is not socialist, they really think that. I mean, really think that in the sense of that's what's in their consciousness. They can't hold that socialism caused this. Because if they did, they couldn't be socialists. So they rationalize and evade around it. I mean, psychologically, and Ayn Rand was so good at the psychological analysis. She was really so amazing at it. Psychologically, there are very few people who are true nihilists in the sense that what they want and what they know they want is destruction for the sake of destruction. I think a lot of people want destruction for the sake of destruction but they can't hold that that's what they want. They'll never admit to themselves that that's what they want, because they'd go crazy if they did. They'd recognize their own evil to such an extent that they would go crazy. So they create fantasies, rationalizations in their own mind to explain what it is that they really, to explain that, no, this won't work, this will work better this time. No, I'm not trying to cause people to be poor. I'm trying to bring people to be middle class. And it's a massive, complex structure of evasion. And evasion, remember, in objectivism is, in a sense, the source of all evil. That is, that act of evasion is what's evil. It's the wanting the destruction deep down is a consequence of other evasion. So it's all about that evasion, that negation of reality, that turning away from reality, turning away from facts. That's what makes them evil. So even if they don't hold it in their mind, yes, I want everybody to be poor, isn't this going to be cool? They have to, they're still evil because they're evading the fact that what they're going to do is going to make everybody poor. Now, it's also true that the homelessness problem is a complex issue. It's complex because it has to do with building regulations and the fact that government has disincentivized builders, developers from building homes that are cheap enough for poor people to actually live in. It's complicated because homelessness is massively subsidized through government. It's complicated, and I think I've given this example in the past. Like Los Angeles has this program where if you're homeless, you get a free home, right? You get a rent-free apartment. And they keep building these rent-free apartments and providing them to homeless people, and yet the homeless problem never goes away. And that's because homeless people from all over the country go there expecting to get a free apartment. And some people who have an apartment, but they're paying rent, go and become homeless for a while in order to get a free apartment. So you see the incentive structures and but it's all driven by government policies and lack of thinking, evading, rationalizing, instead of actually recognizing the facts. So homelessness is driven primarily through a variety of complex government programs. The other aspect of this, of homelessness, is mental health. There's a large number of homeless people who have mental health issues. And I think in a rational society, what would happen is that charity would basically subsidize them to be institutionalized in mental institutions. And what you get today is they can't afford to be in those institutions. The government, I think, doesn't pay for them to be in those institutions. So they're out in the streets. It's also true that it's not clear whether they can get the kind of help in the world we live in today that would help them become, self-sufficient. So there are many cultural, psychological, and government policy reasons for the whole homeless crisis. Note that a lot of homeless people who have mental problems are also vets. And this is to a large extent part of the problem of going on the kind of wars that we've gone on since the Korea War. Undefinable wars which we don't tend to win, and where the rules of engagement and where the rules of engagement are crippling, but also where the moral certainty is not there for the soldiers, so they come back more traumatized, I think, than from previous wars. And then I think the whole veterinary health system, which is destructive and bad, instead of funding their help in the private sector, which probably would give them much better psychiatric and other health care, they are sent to a government, socialized medicine type system, which betrays them, and then many of them become homeless. So there are many, many reasons for homelessness, but they all, at the end of the day, have to do with a mixed economy and have to do with the welfare state. Okay, Michael also asks, why intellectuals often so much more evil than the general population? Well, because, because they're intellectual, and evil has to do with the use of your mind. And what they are trained to do, what they're encouraged to do, what they're incentivized to do in academia is to evade and rationalize and trivialize knowledge. That is, focus on irrelevancies. And actually the penalty for thinking and actually acknowledging reality and engaging with reality is pretty severe in the intellectual world. So there's a huge incentive to incentive in quotes, because it still hurts you, to evade, to play the game, if you will. Right? I also think that academia trains them to do that. Leonard Peikoff always said, the PhD is a guarantee to being stupid in a sense, but it's not stupid. It trains you to evade. It trains you to rationalize. It trains you to ignore reality. In much of economics and finance, and it trains you in statistics and just complicated statistics and massive statistics, and you forget the actual content, what's actually going on out there that is of importance. That's why I think intellectuals are more evil. But again, they're evil because of that evasion, the evil because of the rationalization. And of course, most people don't evade as much because they don't have access to as much information. Intellectuals have no excuses. Intellectuals have access to information about what's really going on in the world. A lot of people, regular people, don't know. I mean, I don't blame regular people for the way they vote or the way they think as much, because they don't know. They're told by the intellectuals all this crap. They don't have enough experience. They don't have enough knowledge. They haven't been trained to be critical thinkers. And they're kind of impotent. And it's sad. I mean, Ayn Rand, in one of her essays, I think in Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, talks about the young girl having a job, just trying to make a living, or the housewife trying to spend money frugally and use the money they have consistently, and then she sees how millionaires live, and then she's told by all the intellectuals that millionaires exploit the people, and she is struggling because of the millionaires, and it's hard for her to have the perspective of billionaires create jobs, billionaires deploy their mind, all the benefits that I always talk about, what millionaires and billionaires do. It's hard to have that perspective if you don't have the time to think about it, and if you don't have the information, the knowledge, the economic knowledge, the historical knowledge about what actually happens and what actually goes on. So it's not super surprising that the common person is the way they are. And they're not in that sense evil. It's just unfortunate. They're misinformed. And this is why the role of the intellectual is so crucial in our culture. And we will never have a more rational culture until our intellectuals are better. Until we replace the intellectuals, until we fire them and put better people in charge. And of course, the people who go to intellectual careers, particularly the ones who go to careers as public intellectuals, again, not all of them, but some of them, are power lusters. They're the Ellsworth Tuohys of the world. They're the people who want to control the simple people, the ordinary people who can't really hold these vast ideas. And they want to control them. They want to have power over them. And that's what makes them so evil. So, no, I blame the intellectuals for everything. For everything. People blame the media. Well, the media is just a product of the intellectuals. People blame politics. Politics is just a product of the intellectuals. The intellectuals are everything. And that's why the most important thing we can do is replace them, challenge them, question them. And this is why, if I can self-promote, this is why supporting somebody like me or somebody like Alex Epstein or some of the better intellectuals in the dark, what's it called, the intellectual dark web, or Dave Rubin, or anybody like that. Why it's so important to support us, because we provide that alternative intellectual voice. A culture has to have intellectuals. A culture is shaped by its intellectuals. If we cede the ground to the conventional intellectuals, we get the culture that we have today. We get a horrible, evil culture. If we cede the ground to them, we get evil. We get evil controlling our culture. So why it's so crucial for you to support the Ayn Rand Institute, why it's so support the Ayn Rand Institute significantly, because it trains future intellectuals. And why it's so crucial for you to support those intellectuals who are fighting on your side is because of how crucial intellectuals are. It's not just, I'm supporting somebody. I'm supporting the people who shape the world. And if you support, it's either you get to have a say in who gets to shape the world by supporting them, by giving them a voice, by amplifying their voice, or somebody else does. Universities do. The think tanks of the world do, who hire these people. Or, the supporters of those intellectuals who are really, really bad. Marx was an intellectual supported by the heir of a businessman, Engels, right? Intellectuals have always been supported, the good and the bad ones. Some, like Ayn Rand, didn't need that support because they wrote novels and made a fortune. But most intellectuals need to be supported. And I'm not just talking about financially, I'm talking about amplifying the voice, sharing and repeating and using their talking points in your conversations. Okay, we got lots of Super Chat questions today, but we're probably going to cap it on these, so otherwise the show's going to go too long. Michael asks, is happiness not essential to survival? I know plenty of miserable, hate-filled people who are still around. Yeah, but survival, as objectivism understands the term, is not having a pulse. Survival is survival qua human being. Survival as a living, thinking, rational animal. Survival as everything that it entails to be human, materially, physically, spiritually. And yeah, lots of miserable, hate-filled people are not surviving. They are slowly dying. Slowly dying. So the option is to survive, which means to thrive, which means to succeed, which means to be happy, or to slowly die. Or to fast die, but to die. Miserable people are slowly dying. Irrational people are slowly dying. Evil people, those intellectuals, are slowly dying, destroying themselves, killing themselves in small little cuts. You're either moving towards life, which means towards thriving, towards succeeding, towards surviving, towards happiness, or you're moving towards death. You're moving towards misery, pain, anguish, frustration, hatred, all the negative emotions. Right? And sometimes poverty, sometimes not. Right? But and all of that is death. All of that is death. Living death, but death. So Ayn Rand doesn't mean surviving. I got a pulse. All right, I'm good. I'm fulfilled by survival. Right? No. Survival means, she says this over and over again, qua human being. Survival qua man. And what she means by that is qua rational being, rational animal. Which means everything that entails, spiritually and materially. Reed McGrew, are you concerned about actions of the FBI and Justice Department in their efforts to oust Trump? I mean, I don't know. I think we're getting a lot of biased reporting on both sides, and it's hard to tell what's actually going on. But no, I'm not particularly concerned, because to the extent that the president, whatever president it is, has not done anything, then what is the FBI and Justice Department actually going to do? Think about the fact that the Justice Department was run for a long time by what's his name? Jeff Sessions, who was the first senator to go for Trump. So he was a huge Trump ally, in spite of the fact that Trump hated him, in spite of the fact that Trump ultimately condemned him and ridiculed him because of the Russia affair. Sessions was there. Would Sessions allow the FBI and the rest of the Justice Department just to do random nonsensical things in order to get rid of Trump? I just don't think so. I think I think the whole independent counsel thing there's a question mark on whether it makes any sense. I think that was true when they tried to go after Clinton in the 1990s. I think it's been true for a long, long time. But there has to be some mechanism by which to investigate the president. The Justice Department has to have some autonomy to do that. The FBI should certainly be in a position to be able to investigate the president. It's very hard to tell with what's going on right now. None of this strikes me, this Russian collusion. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if there's any real evidence of anything that rises to more than the Trump administration went to the Russians and asked if they had dirt on Clinton, which I think they probably did, and which I think is wrong and bad, but I don't think is the worst thing a president's ever done, given the things that they do on almost a daily basis, which is pretty horrific. But I'm not particularly concerned, right? So what's going to happen? I mean, the FBI can't depose the president. The Justice Department can't oust the president. The most they can do is file criminal charges against them. Then it still has to be, the president has to be impeached by Congress, and that means both the House and the Senate. The House has to impeach him, and then the Senate has to actually try him and vote on it. And the likelihood that a president who hasn't done anything or anything horrific would actually go through all of that, the FBI and the Justice Department, all of that, and then be impeached, I think is almost zero. So I think Nixon would have been impeached because he was a crook, and he lied about it repeatedly. And I think if Trump has done anything of that magnitude, and I don't know that he has, then he's going to be impeached and he might have to resign. But no, I'm not. I mean, I'm concerned about the FBI and the Justice Department have too much power, but that goes hand in hand with my concern about the FBI, about all of government having way, 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 way too much power. Of all the things about the state and about our government that worry me, the FBI and the Justice Department going after Trump or going after any president is not high on my agenda. Them listening to me, the NSA listening to what I say, the Snowden stuff, much more concerning than this. Civil forfeitures, which actually there was a Supreme Court ruling today, unanimous. Everybody voted for it. Actually, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the opinion, the majority opinion, which was the majority was everybody, against civil forfeitures. That was a terrific, terrific event. That concerns me much more than the FBI and the Justice Department going after the president. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? The very, very worst case scenario. That the president of the United States gets replaced by the vice president. I mean, who cares? I mean, they're all politicians. They're all, bad people. I have no particular, the process, the voting, the people we vote in. I mean, they're much more urgent and critical concerns that this country faces than whether Trump or Pence is president and whether the FBI finds something on Trump that Congress and the Senate thinks is significant enough to impeach him. And that should be a concern. I'm not. It's a waste of time and it's a waste of money and it's a waste of a lot of media attention. But they seem to enjoy that. And I don't follow it because I find it uninteresting. Given the horrors that are going on in the world, I find that what's going on in Justice Department FBI uninteresting. Hi, Yaron. It's Francisco. What's your experience of Puerto Rico healthcare system been like? I've been hoping to fund you. Can you please message me the link to PayPal alternative? I mean, the best PayPal alternative is yaronbrookshow.com/support. yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can make a payment there. You can also send me directly on PayPal, paypal.me/Yaron Brook Show. So either ways, you can use that. My experience of the Puerto Rican healthcare system so far has been pretty good. I've got a concierge doctor here, and they are very nice, and the facility is beautiful, and they've so far we've done well. My wife's gynecologist has been really good and really helpful, and she has found a way to circumvent some of the bureaucratic and waiting lists that many people have to go through. A bit of money, like turning your doctor into concierge doctor, solves a lot of problems. So, if I had a major surgery or something significantly wrong with me, I would definitely not stay in Puerto Rico. I would definitely go to the States to have medical treatment done there. If I had cancer, I had heart disease, or if I had to have surgery, I would try to do it in the U.S. It's just not the same here. The medical facilities, for the most part, our concierge doctor is private and beautiful, but I wouldn't want to spend a night at a hospital here. I think that's the biggest drawback, I'd say, to Puerto Rico is, as you get older, the need for significant healthcare resources that they just don't have. All right, we got one last question on the Super Chat. Then I want to say one more thing about Donald Trump, and then we'll call it a night. Is the deregulation of Donald Trump part of the reason we see electric scooter revolution across the country? Do you believe these electric scooter businesses are game changers like Uber and Airbnb? No, I don't think the air scooters have anything to do with Donald Trump. I don't think the federal government regulates air scooters. I think the electric scooters are regulated. Their use is regulated by local governments, and so you see them thriving in some cities. Austin, they're everywhere. Austin, Texas, they're everywhere in San Francisco. Other cities, I think they're less because either the city is more open and distances are further and the electric scooters don't last, like probably in Orange County, California, or because cities have banned them, and some cities are banning them, and I think even San Francisco has thought about what to do about them because they can be a dramatic, real nuisance. I think they are. I don't know if they're game changers, but they are significant in a sense that they're going to influence urban planning significantly. They're going to influence the way the inner cities really work. I think the scooters are primarily going to be used in the inner cities, in major cities. Manhattan, I don't see scooters used in Manhattan because it's too crowded. So I think the scooter revolution is going to skip over Manhattan. That's why it's not a Trump thing. It's just a city by city thing. I think you'll see them in certain cities be huge, but they're not as, like, you can't use them in the winter. So no, I don't think they're anywhere close to Uber and Airbnb. While I think they'll be heavily used in places like San Francisco and parts of LA and certainly in Austin, Texas, and maybe in parts of Dallas and Houston, and but they're so vast that, they have limited use in a place like Dallas and Houston. Maybe in other central cities, particularly cool areas where young people hang out and where there's a lot of high tech. But I just don't see them on the scale of an Uber and Airbnb really changing the dynamics of a market like we've seen Uber and Airbnb do. All right, I'm going to take one other topic that I had prepared. I had a bunch of them, but didn't get to them. And that is Saturday Night Live and Donald Trump. I mean, I just think this is so outrageous and so ridiculous and so scary. Again, not because of Donald Trump will do anything about it, but he's setting a precedent and changing our attitudes towards what constitutes free speech. This is so on Saturday Night Live, they made fun of Donald Trump. On Saturday Night Live, forever, they made fun of pretty much every president ever. I'm sure they made fun of Democrats and Republicans. I'm sure they make fun of Republicans more than Democrats because the writers and the actors in Saturday Night Lives are likely to be leftists rather than people, conservatives or libertarians or anything like that. So they make more fun of, grow a set, right? But this is what Trump wrote after Saturday Night Live, the most recent Saturday Night Live. He writes, nothing funny about tired Saturday Night Live on fake news NBC. So first, nothing funny about the tired Saturday Night Live. Well, if it's not funny, then obviously their ratings would be down and they'd be doing poorly. I doubt that's true. I think Donald Trump is probably, probably something people like watching on Saturday Night Live. So I don't know why he's imposing his taste and his views about what's funny on the American people. Anyway, okay, so he's a little insulted and he doesn't think it's funny. Fine. But then he says on fake news NBC, this is not news. This is a comedy show. It's not news. It's not presented as news. Not described as news. It's a comedy show. And yet he's now using this to attack fake news. I think the whole use of fake news and the way it's used by Donald Trump is an attack on free speech. It's setting new standards in terms of the government deciding what is fake and what is not fake. The president of the United States commenting on what is fake news and what is not fake news. That is very, very dangerous territory for us to be entering in. Again, it's not that Donald Trump is going to pass legislation, but he is making it acceptable for one day in a not so distant future for that to happen, for legislation about hate speech, for legislation about true news versus fake news. If he gets a second term, who knows where this will take us in terms of what he will try to do in terms of regulating the news. I find it unbelievably scary that the President of the United States would be talking like this. And then he goes on. Question is, how did the networks get away with these total Republican hit jobs without retribution? Retribution from whom? Now, this is the worst I think he's ever actually done. Retribution from whom? I assume retribution from government. Who else has the power to have retribution? Now, the government should be in a position to regulate whether they go after Republicans or Democrats, whether it's a hit job or not a hit job, whether it's false or true, whether it's fake, whether it's good, whether it's bad. The government would then retribute, penalize you. That's the worst I've ever seen. If SNL is not funny, don't watch it. I thought it was hysterical in its prime. I used to watch it in its 70s. But why are you watching it? And the fact is, millions of Americans are watching it. Otherwise, it would have gone bust a long time ago and it folded. Likewise, for many, what happened there? Likewise, for many other shows, very familiar, very unfair, and should be looked into. Who should look into it? The government? The government should look into it? This is real collusion. Now there's collusion? This is an antitrust case because the media happens to share the same ideas. This is now collusion. This is antitrust. They should be broken apart. Maybe the government should take control of them and regulate them. And then he follows up the tweet with, the rigged and corrupt media is the enemy of the people. Now, this is how dictatorships, authoritarian government gets established. These kind of statements set the groundwork. They set the framework. They set the attitude. Just these two statements should disqualify Donald Trump from being president. Just these two statements should make it impossible for any rational, freedom-loving person to vote ever for Donald Trump, no matter who the alternative is. For this to be spewed from the right, for this contempt for free speech, for this contempt for the marketplace, to be just shrugged off and ignored as if, another tweet from the president, is insanity. If you want to impeach Donald Trump, this is the basis on impeachment. He has sworn to protect and preserve the Constitution of the United States. And what he's doing here is undermining that Constitution, undermining free speech, undermining the freedom of the press. And for that, he should be condemned to hell forever. And certainly should not be allowed to be president of the United States. I mean, again, this is how you pave the road to authoritarianism, whether he is an authoritarian in practice or not. So this is it for me. right? I don't care who runs against him. I'm not voting ever for Donald Trump. All right, I got that out of my system. I feel a lot better. Thank you for letting me, emote a little bit. Rationally emote, express myself passionately about Trump. I've done it before, but, he just gets worse in so many ways. And then you want me to get excited because the Justice Department and FBI are harassing him? With tweets like this, I can't blame him. All right, now I know you're going to say, well, the president has freedom of speech. Yes, but not as president. As an individual, yes, but not as president of the United States. You don't have the freedom to threaten. You don't have the freedom to, imply threats even. Okay, thanks everybody. It's been a pleasure. A reminder to everybody, you can support the Yaron Brook Show partially by your super chats. That's great. You can support it on yaronbrookshow.com. That's my website /support. yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can make a monthly contribution there. You can subscribe. You can get all the benefits some of you used to get on Patreon, but we should have a lot more supporters than I had on Patreon. Patreon was pretty meager. We should be in the thousands here of supporting the show financially and really sending a message about, what the role of these ideas are in the future of this culture. And you guys will determine what role these ideas have in the culture's future. All right, thanks a lot. And I will see you all tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. It'll actually be an hour later, so 8 p.m. East Coast time.